a small gathering this week, and we'll take advantage of that. We'll all have lots of time to talk, and that certainly won't stop us having our experiences. And when I can't remember, because Wendy asked me about retrieval stuff I'd done since she last spoke to me, and I had to chuckle and say I couldn't remember anything. And then after we got offline on Sunday, I remembered, and I'm sorry, I can't remember if I posted this on, say, the TMI site or not. I certainly made notes of it, but I did some retrieval work with the hostages in Gaza that were shot by Hamas. This, of course, lots of ugly stuff has happened since then, but it was a big deal for a few days. And I was very curious to see if they needed some retrieval, and they did. They were they were going to be part of an exchange of prisoners deal, and had felt that that was going to happen, but it wasn't happening fast enough for Hamas, I guess, and they got shot. And I found them in a tunnel and talked to them, tried to get them to move on to a retrieval, a reception center. It took a little while, and they had a lot of attachment emotions because they were fairly sure they were going to be released in a prisoner exchange, and at the last minute their hopes were dashed. So they were pretty annoyed about it all. And when I got them to a reception center after a bit of convincing, they said they wanted to come back, and this would be a day or so after they were shot, and that moved into these huge demonstrations in Tel Aviv, where the media reported as many as 400,000 people were demonstrating against the Netanyahu government and the war. And that was precipitated, I think, by the shooting of these hostages who they felt, I don't know if you didn't catch any news or podcast that day, you might have missed it, but there was an incredible number of people demonstrating in Tel Aviv, jam-packed. It reminded me of the demonstrations in European capitals against the Iraq war of 2003 or whatever. Huge numbers of people. And so these hostages, dead, taken to a reception center, some of them wanted to come and have a look at the demonstrations. And I was, they said, can you come and take us? So I went back to the reception center a few hours later, and four out of the 8 or 6 of them wanted to come and have a look. So I took them back, and they were just kind of hovering over the streets and lapping up the sort of praise they were getting, and the pleasure of seeing these many thousands of people demonstrating against the government that they felt was kind of responsible for their executions by dragging their feet on the prisoner exchange. So they kind of felt like heroes, and I didn't try to talk them out of that. That was their need to feel that way. They would just have loved to have been standing on some balcony waving at the crowds, but of course they couldn't do that because they were ghosts. But I thought it was an interesting turn of events, and certainly not anything I anticipated. So I do have a written account of that, and for the life of me, I meant to check this morning to see if I'd loaded it up to the TMI Facebook group, and I forgot. I got busy with other stuff. But if it's not there, I'll put it there. And that, I think, is really the only thing that I'd been up to other than editing. Oh yeah, I've been editing the little booklet about our retrieval work, or we have a chapter in it, which David, you saw that chapter earlier, and now it's on Cynthia's desk because she's very good at doing copy edits. She has a much more of an eagle eye for mistakes than I do. So once she's had a week or two with it, then I'll be getting ready to load it up to Amazon. It's about a 60-page little booklet on retrieval work. So that's about, I can't think of anything else of any great interest that I've been up to other than that. So let's move on, unless one of you guys have something that you'd like to either say or ask before we get started. Any comments at all? Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, sure.
Uh, so do you, like, if you're just sitting around watching TV or just sitting around looking out the window,
Yeah.
do you have spirits that bother you to, or do you just, every time you go to help retrieve somebody, that is what your plan is to do, right? You don't spontaneously just end up somewhere to retrieve somebody.
Not recently, although I have in the past. A lot of that you'll find in my memoir. As you know, there's so many different cases covering 10 to 15 years. The one that I'm thinking of that's kind of amusing is in my memoir, and it's when Ray Manzarek, the keyboard player with the Doors, he passed from cancer about 10 years ago. I can't quite remember, but around that time. And I'd already talked to a few musicians. And one night when I was in the middle of binge watching, I think it was Downton Abbey, I'm not sure, but something I really enjoyed. And I felt his presence and he wanted to talk. And it was in the middle of an episode, and I said, okay, give me some time and I'll get to you. And so I got to the end of an episode, and I think I paused it, and I was watching on a DVD, so it was easy enough to pause. And I went upstairs, and maybe I was a little hungry, and I had a glass of water and a little snack or something. And he's on my case. Gordon, are you ready? Are you ready? And I'm not sure why he was impatient, but he was. And if you watch the video of this, which is up on my YouTube channel, I mean, it's an old one, you'll have to dig through to find it. You see me coming down the hallway with my laptop at the time. I've got it turned on. I'm ready to make a YouTube, so I'm being recorded. But the way the hall light and my light from my laptop was shining on me, I didn't realize this at the time. It gave me these funny looking, my eyes looked like ghostly eyes. It's quite funny. It's like a kind of a cheap horror movie for a few minutes as I come down the hall and sit down here in this room. And then you know, I apologize to him for taking so long and explaining, this, that, and that. And we get talking, and that's the one where he didn't tell me ahead of time, but he brought Jim Morrison along with him, and I talked to both of them. Although Jim Morrison had been dead quite a long time and wasn't that keen on being the rock star anymore. Ray had to sort of drag him into the picture. Oh, come on, Jim, you got to talk to this guy. So that was one. There's been others, Carol. Again, they're older ones that are in the book. I'm pretty sure that British politician Joe Cox, who was stabbed in the middle of the street, in the middle of the Brexit squabbles, by some unhinged guy, and died. She was quite keen to give a message to British people about respecting other people's opinions, no matter what your politics are, because the Brexit thing really drove Britain right in half. It was pretty crazy for a while. So she was one that asked, or maybe a guide asked for her. There's others. Lee, it happened a few times, not so much recently, but it does happen.
What did you say that you were doing when this most recent
that I had read about in the media, And I was thinking about it, and I didn't do anything for a while because I thought, oh, this is going to be really hotly political. No matter what I say, I'm going to upset somebody. So I fussed over it for a few hours, and then in the next morning, after sleeping and waking up at 6, and finding myself in that half awake, half asleep stage, which is
Mhm.
I find very easy to project from.
Yeah.
I sort of said to a guide, you really think I should do this? It sounds very hotly political. And I said, aren't I a little late? I've left it for a few hours. And the guide said, oh, just go backwards in time to about half an hour after it happened, and you'll be able to interact with them.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
so that was what I did. And what you either have seen or will see when I post it is exactly that.
Mhm.
Very early in the morning, sort of a little dopey with sleep.
Okay. All right, good. Thanks.
So yeah. Is that a good enough answer to your question, Carol?
You muted, Carol?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I just wondered if you were ever like bugged, if
Oh
like,
yeah, it does happen for sure. And there's other as you know from what other mediums have probably written or said, you get these annoying little spirits who just want to talk about themselves and are just sort of self-obsessed, and they'll come by and they'll hang around and glom onto you for a while, but they really don't have a lot of interest to say other than oh poor me kind of stuff. And they're already on some level of spirit, but they want some attention, so they come to basically anyone that'll listen to them.
so
And
they're already on the other side.
well,
So
they're either on the other side or they're in the intervening space. And
yeah.
I know I moved somebody up a couple of levels a few days ago. I do that quite often if they're bothering me. But for the life of me, I'm trying now to remember who it was. It was a fairly low level spirit that just needed to be pushed up a bit. Not one of the Shah Israelis. It's a completely different experience. But I did it fairly quickly because they were sort of bothering me. I thought this spirit's going to keep bothering me till I move them on up. And I just sort of got them to hold my hand and moved up a couple of levels and left them at a fairly nice place that might have been the park. I'm not sure. So that does happen from time to time. And I know it happens when I'm asleep and don't remember. Um,
Yeah.
you know, and I do get vagrant spirits that come by. I say vagrant. What I mean is people with unsatisfied lusts and desires. They're gluttons, they're alcoholics, drug addicts, sometimes kind of sex fiends, and I get handed them because spirit feels that if they hang around near my aura, I can clean up their bad habits. And this has happened on and off for years, and I wondered whether I should talk about it to this group because it's a little strange.
Mhm.
And I've gone through phases, not in the last week or two, some years ago, where I'm eating incredibly and thinking, why am I eating so much? And then I go, oh, wait a minute, there's a glutton hanging around, always wanting to finish one meal and start the next. And the same, so I feel the pressure, and I resist it. And but it took me a while to sort of catch on. I'm going back 10 or 15 years here. And those are not necessarily, obviously, I have situations where clients email me and ask for help with a family member or something like that. And that's more conscious. These things I'm talking about, I suddenly realize there's somebody hanging around. And somewhere along the line, guides have decided I'm strong enough to handle this. They certainly won't be doing it to you, so don't worry about it. But I get these souls that have overwhelming desires and lusts that they think they can satisfy through me just because they see me having a drink or eating a meal. And after a while, they find out they can't, but it takes them a while of hanging out to find that out. I don't know if that's any clearer, but that happens once in a while.
Yeah. That's interesting.
You're
It
very,
is, like I say, years, if you talked to me 10 years ago, I'd have been quite troubled by it because I wasn't very good at handling it. And all kinds of odd things happen. When I get sex maniacs hanging around, they they look through my eyes and see everything as a potential for sexual contact. And I'm like, no, 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 no. It's not happening. Forget it. I mean, everything, people on the street, pictures in magazines, all kinds of stuff. And they're just obsessed with this stuff. And it's just not healthy at all. Of course, it's not healthy. But
No.
anyway, I'm just saying it happens, and I don't talk about it. You guys all know me and trust me, so I feel I can, tell you this without freaking you out. I probably wouldn't say it on a global gathering because I don't really know everybody. But yeah, that sort of a thing.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's
that's
not
lovely.
really consciously asked for.
Yeah. It's lovely if you feel you can say anything to us, and we certainly won't repeat anything beyond.
Yes,
No,
okay,
that's
dear. That's
very
fine.
fun.
Thank you for that reassurance there. I've thought about talking about this on, earlier situations if somebody asked, because I do notice it happening from time to time. And because I don't engage in gambling at any point ever, and never have, I don't get the gambling nuts. But they will glom on to other people that go to casinos and, just as something they might do once a month or something. They glom onto those because they love the high of gambling. They really do. Just like alcoholics love the high of drinking, that sort of a thing.
Wow.
So you'll see other psychics talking about it in their books. I know James Van Praagh talked about it in a few of his books. And you just have to be inwardly strong to resist it and fairly conscious to realize it's happening. At first you go, oh, that's a weird desire. Where did I get that from? So yeah, as I
well,
say, you guys are all fairly new. The guides aren't going to throw that kind of thing at you,
mhm.
not for a long while, maybe years down the road. So don't be worrying about it.
I told Gordon that had happened to me too. Maybe someday I'll tell the people on here. I talked to Gordon about it,
Yeah.
and Gordon does, and I was treated for it by someone else and successfully. If anybody has like what they think is an attachment, Gordon does
Mhm.
treat them also.
Yeah, yeah. I've worked with that
Nobody,
over the years. I get email requests from complete strangers talking about their spouses or their uncles or, somebody in the family that's got a very serious attachment, and I can work with it. Usually can work with it.
yeah.
Um,
Okay,
uh,
so we'll go on with the.
yeah, sure. Sorry for that detail or detour.
No, that's fine. There's not a lot of people here, so it's a perfect time to do it.
Yeah, okay, I hear you. Okay then, friends, let's relax after all that news there. Let us sink into a relaxed posture, whatever suits you the best, lying or stretching out on a rocking chair or whatever. And slow your breathing, calm yourself. Let us focus on the eternal now, where we all are. Let us leave all regrets about the recent past and all possible anxieties about the upcoming future. Let us put all that aside and focus on who we really are in the moment. And that is an eternal spirit, unencumbered by all the fears, desires, and doubts and ambitions of incarnation. We can be free of all of that. Maybe not forever, but at least for, the few minutes that we're going to do this meditation, we certainly can. Just unhook yourself from all your fears and desires and doubts. Let us be eternal spirits that can roam the planes and meet up with other spirits that may or may not need our help. If you find yourself interacting with other souls of either a human or animal nature that are merely wishing to communicate and maybe don't feel that they need rescued, that is fine. It's all about contact and seeing what other souls might need. And sometimes they don't need anything, or at least they don't think they need anything. So let us rise up out of our bodies, up through that crown chakra at the top of your head. Allow the astral body to slip out. Move on up through the room that you are in, through the ceiling and through the roof, out into the clear air above your dwelling, whatever your dwelling may be. Let us get accustomed to that newfound freedom. Let us enjoy it for a few moments. Here we are, above the community, above the fields, above everything, except maybe the sky. And as we feel ourselves enjoying that freedom, allow yourself to move to wherever you feel you might want to go, or wherever you might have a hunch that your guides want you to go. Allow yourself that freedom, backwards or forwards in time, and go to any level of the spirit world that you feel attracted to. And once you are there, I will leave you there for usual 15 minutes and allow you to have your experience. And as you have your experience, don't rush it, thinking that I'm going to be pulling you back any second. Allow yourself the full immersion in the experience. Well, you all seem to be still engaged. That's fine. Don't let my voice make you hurry back. Oh, maybe it's getting to be time to return to our bodies. Maybe think about that for a minute. And as you do that, all right, get started on that process. Make sure you bring all aspects of yourself back into the body. And if you're engaged with a spirit presently, you can always say goodbye and I will see you again. You can always revisit someone or some location if you keep the image of it in your mind. The image is all you need to return. Surprising as that may seem, it's true. Well, I'm glad to see we were joined by Christine after the beginning of the session. Nice to see you, Christine.
Thank you, and I apologize for being late.
Oh, that's fine. Don't worry. When I first opened my eyes after my own meditation, and I thought you were actually sitting in the forest because there's such a nice image of trees behind you.
I was doing a nice forest meditation as well.
I bet. So, would anyone like to comment on their experience?
Don't be shy. Julia, did you have one? It's okay if it's an animal.
I'm not sure if it's anything, Dave. You know, this is getting a bit like being at school, actually, the teacher going up. I must admit, I've had a really stressful day. Nothing awful's happened. It's just sorting out financial issues, you know, and I came here so stressed. I was so pleased to get here. So I wasn't anticipating anything. It's actually been very good for me physically because I completely relaxed for 15, 20 minutes or whatever. And I feel a lot better. I feel recharged now. So if nothing else, this has done me a power of good. And thank you all for that. So I do feel my stress levels have come right down. Probably because I was so wound up from dealing with all these stupid things. I felt a bit unsafe, sort of going too far for some reason tonight. So I thought I'd go back in time to perhaps the place where I felt safest in this life, which is probably my childhood garden. So I imagined myself there as a little child again, playing with the flowers and underneath the apple trees, etc., to see what would happen. And then I remembered how I used to go and feed the swans as a young child, and that took me somewhere to hopefully my son in spirit with looking after a lovely swan that passed recently from where I am now. And then I must admit, I started, because I was still a bit keyed up, I think I started wandering, and I did the worst thing, which is start fretting about what I've got to do tomorrow. So I apologize for that, but I just found it mentally difficult tonight, but physically very therapeutic. So that's something. So thank you for that. I can't really say much more at the moment. You're also polite. I mean, I could say you'd be interested. So thank you.
So Julia, did you find yourself with a swan that your son was looking after? Did I get that right?
Well, the chain of thought was I went back to childhood, and I went from my garden as a child to remember a few miles down the road of Windsor. You've probably seen Windsor Castle on the news. I used to feed the swans there with Windsor Castle by me. And then that took me to hopefully to where my son was in spirit, looking after a swan that I've known here until the last year or so. That got ill and passed away. That was a very special swan to me. I used to go and feed him every day. And so I hope that I was perhaps briefly with my son and this swan. But then, as I say, my thoughts I started these stupid niggling thoughts about what I've got to do tomorrow, absolute rubbish, and I was so annoyed with myself, and I just need some advice really on how to stop worrying about what we did earlier today and what we've got to do tomorrow.
Yes,
but,
yes.
Yeah, but I'm satisfied because I just feel better physically for having sat still and relax my mind. So thank you for that.
Very good.
Thank you, Julia. What you said reminded me of some years ago, about 10 years ago, I had a regular Sunday afternoon meditation class, which for quite a while people really enjoyed coming to for almost exactly the reasons that you just gave. And it was obviously providing a service that everyone was working, as I recall, and had busy weeks and stuff. And they started to look forward to, some of them had to drive a distance to get to where I live, just to have an hour's peace and quiet and meditation.
Yeah, so I apologize. I can't come up with anything exciting, but it would be misleading if I did. But anyway, it's very relaxing. Thank you.
Okay, well, it felt like a contact to me, Julia. You were contacting your son and a swan that you both cared for.
Yeah, that's right. How about you, Stanley?
Well, I'm afraid it was like most of the meditation times that I go to the group. I usually go away and somewhere, and I find a peaceful place, and I'm there until called back. I must admit, it's to me, it's a little bit boring because I can never find my way out of it. And until the end of the meditation time, or when the music stops, usually. But as Julia said, I usually find I'm very relaxed at the end of it.
Good, good.
Thanks, Stanley.
Thank you, Stanley.
All right, thank you.
You and Julia found some good places, and you can always go back to those places again at a later
yes,
time.
that's right, yeah.
Carol?
Well, I'm going to chime in with my usual nice, quiet meditation time with the beautiful colors. And I don't know why I can't break this habit, but I feel like it's not for naught, So I do appreciate the time.
Sometimes I wonder, Carol, if you could just, in your peaceful nest of a safe place, instead of going anywhere, invite anybody to come in there and join you.
Well, I had never thought of that.
Well, neither did I until like 5 minutes ago. Honestly, I didn't. So maybe next time we could work on that a little bit.
Sure, yes, I could do that.
Okay, great. Because obviously where you're at is a very pleasant, reassuring, calming place to be. And I'm sure there's plenty of spirits, earthbound spirits would like to be in a place like that. And we could maybe get one of the guides to bring one to you instead of you going out looking. I think it would be something to try.
Okay, sure.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Good.
Christine, would you like to say anything today?
Sure. I was using a sound background meditation, and it took me a little while to just imagine my feet going into Mother Earth and then connecting up, and I wanted to connect with the golden and white light, and it took me a few minutes, and I got a real bright orange. But I was imagining myself underneath this tree with a bench and inviting anyone who would like to come and sit. And so at some point in time, I did feel a shift. I mean, I had this bright orange color, and I felt a little bit of a shift. And then the thought came to my mind of an Irish girl. So that's all. That's all. It was the thought that came into my mind, but that was it. But it was a very, very nice opportunity to meditate. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So you felt the presence of someone, but not in any detailed way.
No, I just
Mhm.
felt a little shift. There was like with the orange, there was a little like it changed a little bit. So I felt like that could be a presence there. But no, I just knew the shift was there. And then I just had that thought in Irish girl, and
Mhm.
then
Mhm.
that was it.
Well, as we've said earlier today, you could always use that imagery in your own personal meditations later to return to that place and see if you can open up that situation to a little more detail. Perhaps the Irish girl would appear and maybe talk to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
It's worth giving a try.
Mhm.
sure.
David, what about you?
Yes. I kind of, what you just said about returning, and I've
Mhm.
read that in your book before. If you have one of these retrievals, and it doesn't always have to be finished in one setting,
Mm,
it can take several settings. And with me, the one that I had, that I'm going to describe today, I just finished it up today, but it started about 4 days ago.
mm,
So today's the fourth time that I've gone back,
mm,
and mine was a combination dream / meditation. And I've had these before where I have a dream, and it's usually happens maybe once a month. And I had it like 4 days ago, and it's usually I remember it. It's very vivid, and it's not a dream about me. Somebody else is in there, and it's usually these souls that get stuck. A lot of them, or most of them, have a traumatic death, and so we're the ones that Gordon describes, and he sees groups of people. Usually, I just see one. It's one person at this point,
mm,
and this one, the dream involved it's not that they're not that gruesome, but they're always something's traumatic's happened to them. And in this one, this was a beating. It was a murder, actually. So I had the dream, which I'm going to tell you in a minute. And then I had several discussions over the last couple days with the guide and the stuck soul. I wrote it all down, and I might have things not totally correct, but I'm not sure if I'm speaking to the guide or the soul, but what's it matter anyways? And then a lot of times Gordon's talked about taking them to reception center. And in this dream, I didn't have to do that. I met enough times that I was able to actually talk them enough into moving on. And I'll talk about that too. So to make it easier for myself, like the other times that I've spoken here, I write these down or else I forget. And as Carol knows, she's in the dream group. I have periods where I dream a lot, and I wake up in the morning and I'm like sleep deprived. And so that's another reason for writing this stuff down, to get my thoughts clear. But first I'll talk about the dream. And the dream was in two parts. The first setting was in an older part of the city that was filled with abandoned, broken down factories. All the buildings had been deserted and they were falling apart. Bricks and broken concrete were everywhere. Dana, who's my wife, and I were with 20 other volunteers, and our job was to clean up the sites with our hands. It kind of looked like Gaza, like what we've seen on TV. I mean, it had nothing to do with that at all, but that's what the city looked like. I'm from Buffalo, New York, and we were a steel mill town. That was our main industry, much like Cleveland, Ohio, and Pittsburgh up in the Northeast there. And it kind of looked like that, old steel mills that were just falling apart. The second part of the dream switches to a dark and dingy restaurant where my wife, Dana, and I went to have some coffee. There was just a few people in there. And we were sitting down enjoying our coffee. All of a sudden, there was a huge ruckus going on in the room on the side. And I saw two men beating up another man, and they beat him to death. And then I woke up. So that's the dream. Now, I'm going to tell you some conversation that I had with the guy. He tells me that, and the guy's name is John, that the deceased soul. John grew up in a steel mill city, and his father was a steel worker that he never saw. His dad had the night shift. His dad worked all night and slept all day. There was also no love from his mother. She stayed home and drank all day. She mentally and physically abused him, told him that he should have never been born, and that he was the cause of all her unhappiness. After high school, John became a steel worker, and he joined, and then part of that was a union, and this union that he belonged to was corrupt. John became an enforcer John became one of their enforcers and a collector of bribes. The one person that showed some love to him was his grandmother, who died when he was 10. And I'll talk more about her because she has something to do with ultimately moving him on. Now I had some more conversation that I wrote down with John. And I asked him some questions. Here's me. How did you become a bully? And he responds to me, I think that what started me off as a bully was because my mother was a bully. When I was 8 years old, I had won a live goldfish from an event in school. One day I forgot to do something at home. My mother took my goldfish and right in front of me, she flushed it down the toilet. I started crying and she laughed at me. Another time I did something that made her mad, and she slapped me so hard in the face that I couldn't hear on one side for 2 days. The last thing I will bring up is that my grandmother gave me $5 for my birthday, and my mother stole it from me to buy beer. The next question I asked, how did you become an enforcer in the union? John answers me, most of the families that lived in my town worked in the steel mill. I ended up living with a group of young men I knew from high school whose dads worked for the steel mill. These fellow classmates of mine started showing me the ropes. I soon found out that the union was corrupt and ran a business taking bribes. I found out that I could make a lot more money doing this. They started me out with easy stuff, but it got more violent as time went on, and we hurt people. Hear me again, asking him a question. Can you say a few things about the rehab that you received? This is the rehab that he received in the afterlife. He responds, they showed me a video of all the assaults that I had done and what I had done to these people. I felt remorseful. They explained that a lot of what I had become was because of what happened when I grew up, especially with my mother. They made me understand that it was wrong to do this, but due to my circumstances, it was easy to see how I got caught up in it, or how anybody for that matter could get caught up in it. They also made me understand that I needed to forgive myself and move on. And then today, actually a little bit before this thing Zoom today, I went out for a walk and I had my final meeting with him. And then I learned a little bit more during the meditation that we had. And I was wondering, well, how are you going to move on? Do you feel like you're ready to move on? And then I saw visually in my mind's eye a birthday party, and it was a birthday party that he talked about, and it was at I was in the kitchen with him. There was probably about 10 people there, relatives, both his parents. There was Robbie was there, who was a friend of his, and his grandmother was there. And he was at the head of the table. He had a birthday hat on, and they brought the cake out with the candles going, and there was like vanilla ice cream, and it was one of the happiest days of his life. They sang happy birthday, and they blew those things that we used to have at parties. It's also you blow into it with air, and it's kind of like a horn. It's a party favor that all these kids would have it. We were all doing that too. And then, because I had asked them earlier, are you ready to move on? And they said yes. And what happened was his grandmother, the grandmother could be a guide, but it looked like a grandmother. His grandmother and Robbie, who I mentioned, Robbie was deceased. He had died of leukemia. Robbie and the grandmother and him went outside, and they went into the light, and he passed over. And that's the conclusion of what's been happening in my retrievals. Thanks.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. And for the people that are having trouble, think that they can't do this, I mean, I've been meditating and trying to do this for 5 years, and it's just lately it's been coming, so it will happen if you keep at it. Nothing happened. I was the same with some of you. I got frustrated. I gave up on it. I didn't do it for a while. Then I went back to it. And if you keep at it, it'll happen to you. Gordon, did we lose you?
No, I'm listening to the complexity of your experience there, David. Fascinating.
It took a lot of times. It took 4 times.
Uh-huh.
And I think if everybody, I mean, if you read Gordon's book and some of his stuff, it's a lot of similarities there to what he's doing. And I think I just learned a lot of it through him.
Well, I'm glad to be an inspiration to you, David. That's very gratifying.
Yeah, thanks.
But I mean, the whole time we've been doing this, Zoom class, you seem to have an experience almost every time. Some of them
Mhm.
quite complex.
And I keep wondering when I'm not gonna have one. I'm just gonna say, hey, I just can't, it didn't work, or.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I did only a very minor one myself, and it didn't achieve anything particular. I got some information out of it, but someone who was in complete denial of what they had done and weren't about to admit it to me, and they weren't dead, by the way, they were alive. They've participated in this rather mysterious explosion of electronic equipment in Lebanon. And, nobody's admitting that they manufactured these pieces of equipment. Everyone says, no, it wasn't us. We gave the contract to somebody else. And the other guy says, oh, no, we didn't do it either. So it's obvious that these things were ordered at a certain point, 5,000 of them, and some intelligence agency operatives, probably the Mossad, managed to put some kind of contact within these so that they would explode on command. But how that was done and who was paid off to allow that to be done, we haven't found that out yet. But I asked to be taken to somebody that was involved in that, and I was fairly quickly. And he certainly wasn't admitting to anything. He just total denial. I asked him if he was involved. He said no. Why are you asking me? And I could see I wasn't going to get anywhere with him. Not that I specifically thought that I would, but it was just something of interest to me. And this person, I think, knew that if he spilled the beans, he would be offed in some way. This was something that takes what the mafia calls omerta, complete silence. And if you've done any research on intelligence agencies around the world, and I'm not just talking about the CIA, I'm talking about all of them, the omerta thing, not admitting what you have done, is taken very seriously. So anyway, that wasn't a retrieval. This was somebody that was alive. And it was just a very, very brief thing that I did at the beginning. And then after that, I concentrated on giving some energetic help to you guys. And without interfering in what you were doing, and just some, energetic boosts.
Do you
And
mean you when you went to see this man about the pages, he was in his sleep state, or did you just manage to contact him in a normal waking state?
it seemed to be a normal waiting state, Julia. It was a brief contact, and his denial and refusal to interact with me pretty much ended it fairly quickly. I sensed a lot of guilt on his part, but I also sensed that he was terrified that if he had admitted this to anybody, a spirit or a real, anybody, an investigative reporter, that would be the end of his life. Because whoever he was employed by would make sure that he was silenced very quickly.
So I'm interested, if you contacted him just like we are now, just in a sort of daytime conscious state, what would he be aware of then? Would he be aware of? Because it's fascinating what people are aware of when you contact them.
Yes, I agree. And when I started doing, a year or so ago, and again, it's on my YouTube series, Contacts from 2023, where guides said to me after I'd contacted some, deceased people and interacted with them from the waking state. A guide suggested, why don't you contact people that are living? And I said, no, you're kidding, to the guide. And they said, no, just do it. And the first person I was asked, it was suggested to me, was RFK Jr. And I talked to him about a year ago. And after it happened, I said, I asked him, have you been, no, after, during, I said, have you been asked to participate in this? And he goes, yes. And I said, does your conscious waking state know about this? And he said, I don't think so. So that, and also a while later, it was Vladimir Putin, which totally freaked me out. I said to the guy, what, you want me to talk to him? You've got to be kidding. And I said the pushback I'll get from this would be terrible. Well, actually, I didn't get any pushback at all. So that was introduced to me as a possibility. And at various times, I have mentioned this. I think I mentioned it once on the global gathering. And at least one person, it might have been Regina, said, oh, Gordon, a lot of psychics do that. It's relatively common. And I didn't quite realize that. Talking to people that are living in a telepathic manner. So that's kind of my background on that, Julia. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
That's amazing.
It isn't it though? Isn't it ridiculous? I never could get used to it. When this happened about a year ago in 2023, and a lot of the other contacts in that series of videos were quote unquote deceased people, but there was a couple of living ones, and I've just mentioned them to you, and the videos are there if you want to watch them. And I was just astonished that it happened. Like many things that happen to me, I'm often quite surprised when they happen. Really.
I thought that in this time that we're in, when something horrifically happens, you think that the people that are committing these horrendous things don't have a conscience, but they do. And I don't think there's anything wrong with meditating and praying and trying to reach their heart to effect a change. I think right now it's really important, and I think we're capable of doing that. And the more people that can gather together in awareness and actually put this energy towards these individuals that are in power, that I mean, miracles happen all the time. And that was reminded me of you talking about contacting a living person. I think that's a wonderful thing to do.
Yes, thank you for that support. And I agree with you. We can, how much we can affect these people, because, all these people that are involved in, what shall we say, aggressive warlike activity, they feel justified in doing it because they feel an allegiance to the state that they live in, whether that state is Ukraine, Israel, Russia, the civil wars in Sudan. They all feel an allegiance, and they feel like they're doing the right thing for their side. And it's very hard. It's not impossible. It's very hard to get them out of that state of mind because they're so attached to the agenda of their group, shall we say.
Yes. Stuck in the material world.
Yeah, so I'm not saying not to do it. It's well worth the effort, but try not to be too disappointed if you don't realize your achieved aim,
Yeah, no, I don't expect to see any results. I just know that if I send the energy, it's going to go there.
Yes,
and
agreed.
It may be just, not effective at all, but at least I know that I'm sending that energy forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It certainly won't do any harm, that's for sure. Anyone else care to add any comments?
Well, if I may ask another general question, as we're a smallish group, it's a really sort of British question, Gordon.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is in the rest of your book, but I just thinking about Princess Diana. You know, that was about 27 years ago now she died. The controversy has raged on about was it a car accident or not. I wondered if you'd ever tried to contact her perhaps and ascertain the truth, or any sort of similar controversial death where there was a suggestion that maybe it wasn't an accident, it was murder, this sort of thing.
Yeah,
If anyone-
in that same group of videos from 2023, if you go to my YouTube channel and look through, I forget exactly which one it is, but there's about 15 of them from 2023. There's one, if you remind me by email, I'll send you the link. I obviously can't quite remember it now, but there's one where I was guided to an astral plane kind of mansion, if you like, where 3 characters called Diana, Margaret, and Elizabeth were having afternoon tea. And suddenly I was there with them. And it looked to me like they knew I was coming. It had been set up. I didn't know I was coming because I'd been doing a bunch of contacts, and this one was as much a surprise to me as any. And Diana was really acting up like the sort of giggly party girl that I think she actually was, fun loving, you know what I mean? And she goes over to the other lady, who I will call Elizabeth, and puts her arm around her shoulder and gives her a big hug and a kiss. So take from that what you may. And as perhaps you know, when the actress who was playing Margaret in The Crown was asked how I can't remember her name now, famous actress, perhaps you remember her name, she replied to the interviewer, well, I did what I normally do. I talked to Margaret through a psychic. And she gave me some advice on posture and language. Did you ever hear that, Julia?
No, that's fascinating. I didn't watch The Crown. I've obviously heard of it, but
Ah.
No, that's really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, I was, like I say, that one was on top of some of the other contacts I had. Again, not telepathic with living people. They were obviously in some astral plane mansion, if you like. And
There's quite a few famous people, aren't there, whose deaths have had a cloud of suspicion over them, and I just wondered if you'd had any astonishing revelations from them. But
well, when I contacted, you probably read the chapters on JFK in my book. I never actually asked them that, but I got the definite impression he held no grudges against the conspirators against him. Of course, by the time I talked to him, it was many, many, many years later, but he seemed to have no grudges at all. But I didn't ask him any specific questions because I wasn't sure that that kind of information would be particularly useful. And since I'd done a lot of my own research into the JFK assassination in Dallas, I already had an opinion. And I thought, well, which had been expressed publicly in various places, not psychically, but, you know, I thought, well, whatever, if I ask him and then I get the answer I'm expecting, then it'll be discounted. So I chose not to ask that question. I might add something that just occurred to me. You might be puzzled at the name because this is very much a bit of Canadian history. Our longest serving Prime Minister, Mackenzie King, who served from about 1920 odd to 1949 or something, and was very great friends with all sorts of other politicians of his day, including Roosevelt. And he was an active spiritualist and for many years, and talked to various, many people, his family members, other politicians, through mediums. And some of this came out, but in his lifetime, but not, till his diaries were published. And even then, very voluminous diaries, hundreds of pages, they weren't treated very seriously by the Canadian journalists or publics. He was sort of mocked for being a spiritualist. Well, anyway, someone, a man whose name I can't remember, but has just come out with a 2-volume biography of Mackenzie King's life as a practicing spiritualist. And it's incredibly more detailed. I've only read reviews of it, incredibly more detailed than anything that has come before. And it doubtless includes many of his contacts through mediums with Franklin Roosevelt, amongst others, and Winston Churchill. So I just mentioned that to you. The book is called The Spiritualist Prime Minister, and it's published by White Crow, who do a lot of spiritualist type books that you might know of.
Yep.
But I'm not even sure I'll read the book myself. It's huge. It's about 800 pages, but you should know that it's out and it's there. And it's finally getting the sort of, his spiritualist contacts are finally getting the sort of respectful treatment that they've always deserved and never gotten.
Well, it was nice seeing everybody. We're gonna meet. Remember that we meet the 1st and the 3rd Wednesdays in the month, so we won't meet.
That's what, when is the next one, David?
I don't have the exact date, but it's a first Wednesday in October.
October, right.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I don't know my date for the global gathering, but it's in and around then. And I'll check on that and let you all know.
Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Great fun.
Bye.
Thank